Hello, welcome back to Buckle Up. I'm Jasper and this is the 987 Porsche Boxster, and today I'm going to try and find out if this is the Swiss Army knife of sports cars. Starting with the exterior at the front of the car, you can see we've got incredibly muscular front quarter panels hiding your wheels, and you can tell this is the 987 Boxster because it's got the nice shaped headlamps. You've got integrated indicators in this cluster, and down here you've got a plastic panel with some front fog lights in it, as well as a large air intake on both sides of the vehicle that follows through to a radiator just tucked in behind this plastic section here. The styling at the front is quite purposeful, but it's not overly aggressive, and the main changes between the 987 Boxster and the 986 Boxster, which preceded it, were damping. So this car became a little bit more engaging to drive, but it was never a dreadful drive in the 986 generation. They just improved upon that for the 987. Continuing down the side of the Boxster, you can see how the incredibly muscular front haunch overshadows the really sloped bonnet line as it drops down towards the front of the car. And this profile actually continues all the way along the side of the vehicle into the rear haunch. Now, the side of the car doesn't actually have that much interesting styling anywhere on it. You've got a very simple profile, but you do have, on this side of the car, a large fake vent. On the other side of the car, there's a symmetrical vent, which is actually the intake for the engine. And on the other side of the car as well, I'm filming it from the really boring side here, you have your fuel filler flap in this front quarter panel. Other things to note, you've got 18-inch alloy wheels at both the front and the back. However, at the front you have a lower profile tyre than you do at the back. So the back looks a little bit undersized to me. However, I must say I do really like the style of these alloy wheels. These are not the standard alloys, they were an optional extra. Now, while the front of the Boxster is heavily shared with the 911, the rear is different. And some people will say that the back of the Boxster looks the same as the front and you can't tell which way's forwards. But they're idiots, because the back is very different from the front. For a start, you've got a much higher profile in the centre section. It doesn't drop away as sharply. And you've got a really muscular, powerful, purposeful back end. You've got a really wide squat design. You've got incredibly fat, with a PH, rear tyres, fat tyres, because they are certified wide boys at 265mm cross section. You've also got this fantastic wide bore centre exit exhaust, and another thing that makes the car different at the back, you've got a spoiler here that pops up, and obviously your rear light clusters are not rounded. It's clearly different at the back. Just before we look in the boot, on the boot lid itself, you've got the badge Boxster, and that tells me that this has the 2.7 litre flat six engine as opposed to the Boxster S's 3.2 litre. Not exactly lacking performance-wise though, because this engine produces around 240 brake horsepower, so not exactly a slouch. Now, the boot capacity of the Porsche Boxster is 130 litres, which is not quite best in class. The MGTF trumps that with a massive capacity of 210 litres. However, I would actually argue that the boot space in the Boxster is a more usable shape, as I shall now demonstrate. It's actually a marvellously flat, wide area, so you can get a lot of things inside of the boot. And that's not all, because while you have this 130 litres at the back of the Boxster, you've also got an extra little bit of storage space up front. Now, while the rear of the Boxster has 130 litres of storage space in it, the front actually has a positively voluminous 150 litres of storage space, which actually means that combined, this car is just about best in class, because you can get a heck of a lot of stuff in it. Sorry, Charlie. At least we put a cover in. Right, enough arsing around. Should we have a look inside the cabin?
You just have to push it down.
In the cabin of the Porsche Boxster, we have a good quality interior that is very well screwed together. You have a leather-wrapped gear knob, handbrake, and chairs. The chairs also have a fantastic amount of adjustability, but bizarrely, the backrest adjusts electrically, while everything else is manual. I can't reach the pedals now. Thankfully, it goes quite a long way forwards and backwards, although that's not quite close enough. That's better. Why am I so short? The steering wheel adjusts for both reach and rake, meaning you can find a comfortable driving position very easily. Given the Boxster is a sports car and a mid-engined one at that, it is fantastically practical on the interior. You've got some storage under your armrest here, you've got a little cubby in between the seats, and you've got a little cubby down here as well for your water bottle wrapper. You've also got a decent sized glove box which is damped and felt lined and has a little holder for your pen. This was built in the mid-noughties after all. And finally, you've got a pair of cup holders which hide in the dashboard, and with a little push fold out, and you can then also return the centre trim section to its upright position, integrating them quite nicely into the interior of the car. This pair does not work very well though. This car does not have a great deal of technology because it's from the mid-noughties. However, you've got a very good driver's gauge cluster. You've got the classic Porsche 3 dials with your rev counter front and centre, because that's realistically the thing that matters the most. You've got your speedo off to the left, which interestingly is marked in 25-mile-an-hour increments, which makes it absolutely useless for here in the UK. And over to the right-hand side, you've got your temperature gauge and your fuel gauge. And you can tell this is a German car because instead of the fuel gauge being marked as half and full, it's marked as 2 out of 4 and 4 out of 4, because we measure the fuel amount in quarters, yeah? The ignition on the Boxster is to the right-hand side of the steering wheel, the correct side, but that does mean you can't, unfortunately, do a Le Mans style start, putting the key in whilst simultaneously putting your seatbelt on. However, it does make it a little bit more convenient for those of us who are right-handed. Putting the key into the slot actually puts the ignition on, and from there you can proceed to start the 2.7 litre flat-six engine. The interior of the Boxster is very dark. You've got black plastic surrounding the windscreen, and both of the sun visors are black and thankfully have integrated lit vanity mirrors, which is very handy if you're a Boxster owner, so you can check your toupee hasn't flown off in the wind. Although, because you have an integrated wind deflector, that's very unlikely to happen. However, if you are still worried about your toupee flying off in the wind, you can of course just put the roof up. Apologies for having to put the windows up, but sound quality will suffer if I do not. Now, this is genuinely the first time that I have driven this car, because the location we're filming in today, somebody else drove it here. I came in the Roadster. So this is an actual first impressions drive of the Boxster for me. And obviously the first thing I've got to comment on is how good it sounds, because it's a 2.7 litre flat 6 petrol engine, rear mounted, and by goodness it sounds good. Now, red line in this is 7,000 RPM, and I've not even been above 3.5 yet, and it already sounds so good. Now, the steering is incredibly sharp. You can feel every little movement that you put into the steering wheel, and all the controls just feel so good. That's one of the things I said about the interior, and now the controls feel really good. They've got weight behind them, and they really do make you work to drive the car. You get so much feeling from them. The gearbox is wonderful as well. It's got such a short throw and such a notchy engagement. And that little rumble from the flat 6 behind you, oh, it's gorgeous. Now, the clutch is incredibly heavy, and while this particular clutch engages quite high towards the top of the pedal travel, it's not, you know, it's a linear and predictable engagement. It's not snatchy at all. The 2.7 litre flat 6 produces 240 brake horsepower and 270 Newton meters of torque, both of which are very healthy numbers. The steering is so direct in this, and you do feel pretty confident because the rubber that you've got is so wide, both at the front and the rear. The grip is incredible. The chassis as well feels so competent, and at just over 1,300 kilos, with such a large, powerful engine, the car does feel very sporty. It revs so beautifully as well. A flat 6 engine is always going to be incredibly smooth and capable, and the way it delivers the power is just gorgeous. The burble as well from that exhaust is just wonderful. I can see why this car is hailed as a really good driver's car, because it is. It feels so tight, it goes exactly where you point it, and you've got such a great amount of power, and the response of everything is just brilliant. It's not as light as it could be, but you've got a really good amount of comfort in here. The interior is really well designed, it's put together nicely, all the materials feel nice, and what that means is that you aren't sacrificing anything. This car is so good at so many things. You've got a surprisingly decent amount of luggage space, you've got a really good driving experience, and you've got an engine and setup to die for. And the gearbox as well is wonderful. It revs so eagerly. As we discovered on the day, while the Boxster does sound excellent within the car, from the outside to an observer, it's actually surprisingly muted. Most of the audio that you can hear in this section is actually Rob's Lotus. The cabin's set up so well. I'm incredibly comfortable. There's so much adjustability and everything. The pedals are exactly where they should be. The steering wheel's directly in front of me, and everything just seems so brilliantly set up. The view forward's excellent. The view behind me is pretty good as well, which is not always the case in a mid-engine sports car. I might need to stop and put the roof up, however. Putting the roof up. Would you believe it? It sounds better with the roof up. Thankfully, by the time we got back to the filming destination, the rain had stopped, so I was able to fold the roof down and form some kind of conclusion. So, the Porsche Boxster, is it the Swiss Army knife of sports cars? Yes. It's got sporty driving characteristics, it's got some looks, and it's incredibly practical for this type of car. A wholehearted recommendation from me. I have thoroughly enjoyed driving it. That's everything from me in today's video, so thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please check out some of our playlists or our other content. You can also have a look at our description where we have all of our social medias and links to our merch store where you can buy some lovely clothing like this, or our Patreon if you'd like to support us in a different way, or you can become a channel member right here on YouTube. I'll see you next time. Bye. Sorry, Charlie.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the Buckle Up Contortionist. Night night. Okay, you can start doing your piece.
Are you all clear of the
Leah.
all clear of the camera?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Is it 170 litres?
It's 130.